Welcome back to the program. It's the Vicki McKenna Show. And I have attorney Dan Lennington from the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. Dan is also a professor of law. So, Dan, let me ask you a big question, a big 50,000-foot lawyer question. Ready? Here goes. Can you just vote so that you don't enforce the law? Is that something democracy allows? We have laws, but you can just vote not to enforce them. Not what I thought democracy was supposed to be about.
No, this is a big problem because what we have in our country and our legal heritage is the rule of law. The idea that we have laws that are passed by our legislatures and enforced by our executives, and that those laws are supposed to be equally applied, and they can't just be suspended for certain reasons that don't make any sense. You can't suspend the laws on employment or your rights to do certain things during even like the COVID times, and you certainly can't suspend people's rights and stop enforcing the rule of law during a protest. Now we're in the seventh day of the protest and the seventh day of Willie Street being shut down. And we're starting to hear from those businesses, the Weary Traveler, a Lazy Jane's restaurant. They're coming out publicly now and saying, "Hey, we can't make rent. We have to pay rent for August. We don't have money to pay rent." But the law is supposed to protect those businesses. The law is supposed to protect those businesses and allow the streets to be opened, so that commerce can go up and down the streets. People have a right to free movement. And we have a situation today where they are putting little nail boards with nails crossing the streets, some sort of like medieval,
Wow.
traps to prevent people from driving or walking down the streets. And the police in the city apparently are completely fine with this because they have used city resources to assist in the closing of these streets. And so the rule of law is not working very well for the people in this Hong Autonomous Zone or whatever we're calling it down on Willie Street.
So the law says that they have protections, that the businesses have protections, the people have protections. Now, part of me is quite entertained by this whole thing because they're the ones who say we should be able to vote to suspend the law, including the people who own those businesses down on Willie Street. At the same time, there's nothing they can lean on. Let's say they want all of a sudden this DSA crazy stuff. I don't think I like it as much as I thought I was going to like it. I think I would like the rule of law. That makes more sense to me. What's their option? Because like you said, now they're booby trapping the streets. They're booby trapping the sidewalks. The police have essentially got a stand down order. I don't know if you happened to catch the protests in front of Whiskey Jack's or in front of State Street Brats. They were up in people's faces, bull horns in their faces, blowing, amplified sound into people's eardrums, being racist, targeting white-owned businesses. If there's nothing you can rely on to assert your rights in protection from a mob like that, then what do we got going on here? What do we call that form of governance?
Yeah, we called these briefly. We called these things luxury beliefs. And the luxury belief was, the environmentalists in California can sit in their beautiful mansions and vote to drain all of the reservoirs, or they can vote so that we reintroduce wolves into Yellowstone, or it's okay for these rascals, DSA rascals, to take over the streets. But the luxury beliefs are the ones you don't have to pay for. But now, some of these people with luxury beliefs who are sitting at concerts on the square last week, as we saw, some of them paid $8,000 for those season tickets to concerts on the square. They're getting bullhorns in the face. People who generally support this idea cannot now avoid the consequences of their own beliefs, the consequences of the policies that they support. And certainly these business owners on State Street, that's a serious civil rights violation. There was a video that I've posted on X that shows that Some of the protesters were targeting businesses because they were white-owned, and that is a civil rights violation. That's actually a federal crime to close a business, to obstruct a business because of the race of the owner. That comes from a law in the 19th century called the Ku Klux Klan Act, and that's supposed to be enforced actually by the Trump administration and the U.S. Attorney in Madison. And so I look forward to hearing from the U.S. Attorney in Madison whether they're going to enforce federal law and prevent this racial violence that's going on State Street. And otherwise, Madison itself has an ordinance that says you can't close the street, you can't obstruct the street. There's a state law saying it's a misdemeanor to obstruct the street. And there's all sorts of laws that would apply to this, including the rights that private people can enforce. Private people can go to court and enforce their constitutional rights against the city, which is not protecting their right to travel and their freedom of movement, which is another significant constitutional right that's being violated. So, these luxury beliefs are coming home to roost for the people now who support these policies, but yet live in these areas and are being victimized by the same policies that they voted for.
100%. So they're reaping what they voted for. But at the same time, like I said, let's say you say, holy cats, I've learned my lesson. This is crazy. I'm not going to vote for this again. You're not allowed to change your mind, apparently, and just say, hey, you need to enforce the law here. Nobody can actually get the city to do this. The alderman in the district is negotiating with people from Milwaukee, the Communist Party of Milwaukee. There are people from well outside. I mean, they brought the George Floyd fist in from Minneapolis, the actual fist in George Floyd Square. And the alder is negotiating with them. Negotiating. Like, you don't negotiate, you clear the crap out. But no, because the city has provided salt trucks and snowplows to act as barricades. The city is providing ongoing trash service. The city has provided porta potties to make sure the occupation can stay in place. The city of Madison's police department, not the rank and file cops, but the chief, who I like to call John Unick, has decided we're not going to address the situation at all. Now, Dan, homeless people, addicts have decided to make this a flop zone. And it didn't take 7 days. It took 2. And now they're stuck with it until they drop the hammer. But that's what it's going to take, isn't it? Actually enforcing the law using force.
Yeah, the police, the policymakers, they don't understand that what they're doing by trying to be kind or progressive or be gentle is actually making it harder to resolve this in the long run. These encampments are actually one-way ratchet. And we saw this at the University of Wisconsin in the Gaza protest, is that encamping, on Bascom Hill without a permit is illegal under UW-Madison rules. But they let them get away with it. And the minute you let them get away with it, then the physical obstructions, the tents, the barriers, the crates, they start to pile up. And it makes it harder and harder every day that goes by because you're creating this acquiescence. You're saying that we are deciding not to enforce the law because we're just being nice and gentle folks to you, and we want to give you your space. But every day that goes by, history shows it is harder and harder to remove these because then the people start to have this expectation that what they're doing is actually lawful. And so they have a pretty good argument to say, well, you didn't enforce the law on me on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Why are you enforcing the law on me on Thursday and Friday? You have actually acquiesced. You've kind of actually given me permission to be here. And so every day that goes by, every porta potty that's installed, every salt truck that is blocking the street is another day where these protesters are gaining the upper hand. And it doesn't matter, they're from Milwaukee or they're from out of state or wherever, and it'll be an attraction this weekend. This will be the hot thing to do if you're a communist somewhere in the Midwest or the East Coast or the West Coast. You drive to Willie Street and have part of this fun because you know what, the cops have set this up as this sort of free for all anarchy zone, and so the kindness actually comes back to shoot you in the foot when you actually someday want to allow people to enjoy their own property, say like
Right.
come and go from your house or go to a business or buy a hamburger or breakfast at Lazy Jane's Cafe. Like you can't do any of that. At some point that's going to happen. But these cops are making it harder on themselves. So I shouldn't say the cops, the leadership of the law enforcement in Madison.
And the city is making, and Sacha Rhodes Conway is nowhere to be found. Tony Evers can say, either you clear this out or I'm calling in the National Guard. He could do that. He's nowhere to be found. Josh Call, the Attorney General, can assert the law on behalf of the citizens of Madison, but he's nowhere to be found. You got to look for these people on the sides of milk cartons because they don't want any part of it. Sacha Rhodes Conway doesn't want to make a statement, no one's even asking her about it, which is amazing. So you have functionally something that is not being reported on nonstop any longer, but it's still going on. It's still frustrating people, but next. Now we've got other things to talk about next. Well, concerts on the square got canceled again. Is it going to go long enough that it potentially cancels other events, other festivals? Great Taste of Madison, for instance. Anything else coming up? It all depends on how long it goes and how empowered the city of Madison lets these people become.
Yeah, and people, we kind of look at Madison and we laugh and say that's, a silly area and they do silly things. But if that happens there, and we elect radicals in the state, communists in the state, and socialists that advance this belief that the rule of law can be suspended for their political beliefs, their political demonstration, their unlawful demonstrations. Then it can happen in Waukesha County, it can happen in the Fox Valley, it can happen in Eau Claire or Wausau, it can happen anywhere, because if the top and the leadership of the government has decided that these unlawful actions, which are impinging on people's freedom to travel and the right to own a business and the right to earn a living, that could be spread elsewhere, and there's no logical stopping point. You can say, well, there's crazy liberal cops in Madison, and the chief of police is a liberal, and sort of dismiss it that way. But no, that this could come for you if this is the leadership of the state of Wisconsin, and they are supporting this idea that the rule of law should be suspended whenever a man with a knife attacks a cop and gets shot to death. Then that will just encourage more violence against cops, because every time it happens, every time there's a cop, some cop that shoots somebody, that it starts one of these spontaneous festivals that the left can use to advance their beliefs and their during the weekends.
And the more you let it happen, the more you don't push back, the more empowered they become, the harder it is to stop, as you have said. Dan Lennington, I do appreciate the time on the program. I encourage everyone, by the way, to go to Dan's X account. I think it's just at Dan Lennington, because you've laid out, particularly if you're a business or somebody in Madison, Dan has laid out the legal case you have if you would like to pursue a demand that the city of Madison enforce the rule of law. I think that would be a good place to start. So thanks, Dan, for coming on the show.
Thank you.